America decides. Well, that was a lie. What's that, stupid Star Wars prequel quote people love? This is how applause dies with thunderous democracy? You get it. Silly jokes aside, this episode sucked. It was tense, hectic, and reminded the audience just how rotten these characters are, by bringing our reality even more into the forefront of the show. If last week left me empty, this week left me angry. Just pissed, with a general feeling of anxiety. Understanding how this episode managed to make me feel that way is core to its artistry. It weaponized our emotions, our experiences of the last 5 years, and escalated them to the surface. All of our peak lockdown memories and the words that I had to hear non-stop on the goddamn Australian news from the worst president of the United States in a time of volatility and extreme uncertainty. These feelings all came rushing back with harsh, sharp recognition at the end of this episode. Truly, Menken's speech and the accompanying reactions were distressing to say the least. Let's start with the man of the night. Everyone wanted a piece of him. He's Tom Wambsgans. This was Tom's big night. Everything needed to go smoothly for him. As Tom furiously stated to Greg, now demoted back to the role of Greg, democracy depended on his digestive system.
I want you Gregging for me! You're busted back down to Greg tonight.
No.
Yeah, tonight my digestive system is basically part of the Constitution, okay? Microwave milk and ginger shots, American bottled water, and spaghetti and olive oil, okay?
I don't want to spend too much time on Tom. This was a very packed episode, and I think last week was a bigger episode for Tom as a character. This isn't to say Tom didn't have his moments. There was a particularly cold one with Shiv, where he justifiably asks if Shiv revealing that she's pregnant is a tactical play, which it is, just not in the way Tom thinks it is.
Like, is that even true? Or is that like a new position or a tactic? Or what? What?
Tom starts off the night attempting to keep some level of control, but the Roy siblings quickly lose composure and start heavy-handedly playing a role in the election coverage. This is another episode that characterizes Tom as someone who has real stakes and plenty to lose. Unlike the Roy children who have grown up in a world of powerful privilege with zero consequences for their actions, to which Tom has not, because if there was any time for Tom to make a power play, this would be it. But as he states, it's not his call. Even though it is. Sort of.
Sort of. Sort of.
Oh, yeah, sort of. That's the part that I'm going to remember. Thanks.
Jesse Armstrong continually juxtaposes the characters like Tom, Greg, and the old guard who had to earn their way into power, with the no-consequence roller coaster riding Roy children who have never known scarcity. There's a particularly poignant moment where the Roy brothers have decided that fascist Mencken will be president, and Greg is sent ahead to brief the newsroom. Greg runs into Jess, and hesitation flickers upon their faces, even a suggestion that maybe Greg just doesn't tell them. Greg responds with, it won't change anything, it will simply be a few minutes before the others reach the newsroom.
It's not going to change anything if I don't go, so...
A couple minutes, so, I mean...
Right.
You...
This is a perfectly quiet and out-of-place scene you'd never expect to be included in an episode of this caliber. It demonstrates how power stifles insubordination through this notion that your actions would never even matter. But they could have. They truly could have. Speaking of people who could have made a difference with the truth, Shiv, ladies and gentlemen. Shiv has kept her cards close and options open throughout the last few episodes, but here she damns herself and damns us through actual ineptitude. There are so many moments here where Shiv is just playing the game horribly. She mishandles Greg, which blows up in her face, continually doesn't use Mattson or Nate to her advantage, and her interaction with Kendall may just take the cake for the moment where these petulant children plummet down another level of the moral void. Shiv, like Kendall and Roman, is incredibly selfish, and her pride and self-serving needs are ultimately what get Mencken the victory. If for just a second she could have put aside her own interests with Kendall, who legitimately opened up and was somewhat vulnerable with her, we could have got an entirely different outcome. But she didn't.
Shall we be totally honest in here?
Shiv and by extension Nate fall into this fallacy that because the Democrats are the clear good option, especially compared to the literal fascists, that just being good is enough. That no further action is required, which is why she lies and why she doesn't give up her own self-serving interests, and why she won't play Roman's game of dirty tactics. The fact is though, our enemy will always use that notion to their advantage. Being morally good isn't enough. You have to play the game. Be charming, make deals you don't want to because there's no choice. And the alternative is cancer, and it destroys everything. It's an entirely opposite circumstance to Greg and Jess, who felt they didn't have a choice when they did. Here, Shiv and the Democrats think they have a choice, that they're above this game of power, when they don't have a choice and fail because of it. Kendall continually reached out to Nate and Daniel, and sure, it's not Ken's best pitch, but they don't even consider it an option. Speaking of, let's discuss Kendall. Kendall is an extraordinarily complicated character, and by extension, Jeremy Strong's performance is one for the ages. However, here in this episode, it all boils down to one decision. One decision where one of these outcomes is indisputably better for his own daughter. It doesn't get any more clear-cut than that. And in the end, Kendall chooses fascism. There's no other way to put it. The markets won't hold the Republicans in check. The markets didn't hold H in check in the 1930s. I think when the 2016 and 2020 American election was happening, we could only imagine what behind the scenes looked like for the powerful. To actually view it in some sense in this television show, that the decision to elect a fascist wasn't because of some shadowy, powerful cabal like last season with Logan. Here it wasn't even really about power. It was the squabbling of some barely human, selfish children who don't know how to understand their own emotions. In a fantastic scene of Kendall having actual doubt about his position and needing genuine advice, Shiv chooses to lie, and in turn hurts Kendall, who in turn sides with Roman, not because of a good power play, but but because he feels betrayed. And consequently, Mencken gets elected. The scene where Kendall finds out Shiv is lying and walks around the glass room is brilliant. His reaction when he gets inside is unreal. It feels like the ultimate splintering of the sibling trio, one Kendall actually attempted to somewhat keep intact. Roman's reaction is pure glee at the ultimate validation of his own position and destruction of Shiv's. It's heartbreaking to see Roman finally find proper singular purpose, but it's in being an alt-right troll essentially. Roman, for the first 5 episodes of this season, really seems like he had turned a new leaf, but here he is, getting a fascist elected and spouting that nothing matters, being a child with meaningless Ben Shapiro talking tactics.
Historically, people overwhelmingly...
Historically, people used to burn witches. Are you saying we should do that?
burn witches? Rome, look! We just know that
the whole episode, he's a pain in the ass, actively diverting the course of any semblance of democracy with zero thought about anyone else.
But I'm just gonna say we're good, and that's on me.
There really will be zero consequences for anything he does or says. I'm not at all the first to observe this, but Roman hasn't changed. He's still just the little boy blowing up a satellite from season 1. Except here, in season 4, the stakes have changed, and he's blowing up America. Connor is an interesting case, because for moments there is a slim possibility that maybe he pulls through. However, Connor stating in an extended scene that what he needs to win is Kentucky, immediately followed by him losing Kentucky, is a perfect way to dash his dreams against a wall. But for us, the audience, brings legitimacy forward for the next 40 minutes of the episode as it inches closer to our 2016 reality. There is no hate, but rather, alas, Connor.
Alas, Kentucky Willa. Alas, vanity.
A fallen angel who ruins all that sympathy I had very quickly in a speech that is all at once very funny and entirely repulsive.
And so I call out to my friends tonight, to my people. I say, Conheads, I salute you. And America, be afraid. Be warned. For the Conheads are coming.
Connor may be the most emotionally honest of the bunch, but the second he gets any kind of power, just like the rest of his family, he uses it for his own selfish, petty gain. I released a Succession video a week before season 4 aired, the thesis of which was that the Roy children are extensively real-world villains. They are extensively villains of basically the real world, that even when they reflect on their own awful actions, it's just another selfish maneuver in this game of power. Because they are selfish to the core. I haven't forgotten this notion. However, in the week-to-week moments, you can't help but become invested in their personal struggles. And that's for the better. We're human. Having said that, in an episode like this that brings this notion back into focus, to bring out our real emotions, it burns. Because the poison does drip through. From Logan into his hollow children, which continues from them into our country, into our world. That same Murdoch poison trickles down into us. That's why when the episode ends with a Nazi speech and an array of concerned faces, we feel an anti-nostalgia that reminds us that we can't sleep at night.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe.
Watch it, Tom. We do.